Mouse followers, this is what we're going to be trying to recreate today. This is from a site called Studio Sabia, and they are a site of the day on the awards site. Now the effect is pretty cool. As you move your mouse, you see images pop up and they slowly fade away. The effect itself is pretty novel, and after we finish recreating this, I'll share my idea of how to make this even more engaging. And with that, let's dive in. So let's break down the effect. So when the user moves their mouse, an image will show up, and after a period of time, it will disappear. Now, the faster you move, the more images you get. So I think the first step is we need a bunch of images because it looks like they're pulling in random images. So I created a div with a bunch of images in it. Now I gave the div a class of image list and I hid this. So the idea being is this is going to be hidden. Then as the mouse moves, it's going to pull a random image from this container. So that's all the HTML we need. So let's move on to the JavaScript. So first thing we're going to do is just create a variable that pulls in all of the images from that image list div. And we're going to create an array from it. This way, when we're handling the mouse move, we can select a random image from this array. So the next step, now that we have our images, we can handle the mouse move. So as the user moves the mouse, we're going to create an image from one of our random images from our array. So we'll add an event listener, mouse move. Then inside here, we're going to create an image, and then we're going to pull a random image from our images array, and then we're going to get that source. Adjust the CSS so the top and left is the same as where the mouse currently is. And then we're going to add a class to that image called drop image. And then finally, we're going to append it to the body. So right now the image is absolutely humongous and you can't really tell it's doing anything. So we're going to add some CSS to address that. So under styles, we're going to add the class dropped image. We're going to add the position of absolute so that we can move it around with the left and top styling. And then we're adding a max width, and I'm using a variable here in case you ever want to change the width of it, but we put it to an arbitrary number. And then I rounded the corners just for the look of it. Now when I move my mouse around, you can see it's moving way too fast, and it also isn't fading out. Let's handle the fading out first, and then we'll adjust the speed a little later. So we're going to use CSS animations to do this. So first thing we need is our keyframes, and I call this zoom out fade, and it goes from opacity of 1 to opacity of 0, and then it scales it from 1 down to 0.2. Now that we have our keyframes, we just have to add it to our dropped image. And inside of here, I added this animation zoom out fade. I created a variable for the speed and the delay. You can see that here, a speed of 1 second and a delay of 0.1 seconds. And forwards, and I created a easing here. Now the animation delay is because if you look at the effect, the image stays up for a little bit and then it fades away. So that's what that delay does. It's how long you want it to stay up before it starts fading. Now looking at what we have, you can see that it fades away, but it's still way too fast. And right now the image is not centered on the mouse, it's doing the very top left. So let's address that next. So to center the image, I just added this transform translate. This will shove the image to the left 50% of its width and up 50% of its width. So the mouse will end up in the middle of the image. And because we're animating with the transform, we have to make sure that we maintain this during our animation as well. So now as we look at this, the image is in the middle of the mouse. So right now it's adding a bunch of images to the body and never removing them. So let's clean that up first. And then after that, we'll deal with the images being added too quickly. Jumping back into the JavaScript, I added this animation ends event listener, which will listen to when the CSS animation ends. Then it's going to remove this image from its parent, which is the body. Looking at the effect, my initial thought to slow things down was just to put a timer on it or debounce the mouse handler. But looking at the actual animation, you can see that the distances are always consistent, no matter how fast I move the mouse. If we did it based on time, sometimes the images would be closer and sometimes they would be further away. So it looks like they use distance to determine when to place the image down instead of just having a timed way of doing it. So the first thing we're going to need is a way to be able to tell the distance from our last image. And we can do that using the hypotenuse. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And we'll just create a function to make that easier for ourselves. We'll also add a variable to store the last image position so that we can determine how far we are away from the last image that was placed. Inside our mouse handler, we can figure out the distance from the last. So we call our helper function getDistance, and then we place in the last image position and our current XY. So it'll figure out how far our last image is away from our mouse. Then if the distance isn't far enough, then we're going to return early so that we don't add the image below. And this window inner width divided by 20, I just took that from the site, but this can be an arbitrary number that you can figure out yourself. Using window inner width allows for different size screens a little better. And finally, we just update the last image position with our current mouse's X and Y. That's where we placed our image. And with that, our follower is a lot slower now. Now there is one edge case that can happen because the mouse move event gets fired so frequently. It can fire again as we're adding the image, as we're kind of going through this process here. So we just want to make sure that if we're in the middle of adding an image, we don't want you to add another image because currently there is a possibility of it adding two images back to back right after one another. So we're going to add a variable called isAddingImage. And then inside of our mouse move, we're just going to short circuit it here so that it doesn't do anything below if we're currently adding the image. Then right before we add the image, we set the variable to true. And then after we've added the image, we set it back to false. Now you can't really see that change because it was a bit of an edge case. But with that, our effect is complete. At the beginning of this video, I had mentioned that I had an idea to make this effect a little more engaging. And I don't mean to brag, but I think I came up with a pretty good idea. So my thought process was, what do people like? And based on social media, I would say it's photos of cats and potty humor. So I came up with a mouse follower that incorporates both of them. Nice. So let's say we have a kitty litter site here, which is just makes sense to use this here. I created a bookmarklet so you can go on any site, and when you click on it, now your site's that much more engaging. Is Netflix too boring? Not anymore. Can't find what you're looking for on Google? Instant engagement. I also created a bookmarklet for the mouse follower that you saw in the intro of this video. I'll link to this CodePen which has the bookmarklets, and to use them you just drag them into your bookmark bar. I'll also link to the individual pens for each of the mouse followers. If you guys have any funny ideas, I'd love to see what you come up with. Feel free to fork this pen. And if you feel like sharing, just paste the CodePen ID in the comments below. And that's it for this video. If you enjoyed this type of content, be sure to like and subscribe. And thanks for watching.